Dr. Richard Holmes had always considered himself a man of science, a rational, methodical physician who believed in facts, logic, and the undeniable power of the medical profession. It was why he chose to be a doctor, to help people with real, tangible problems. Yet, despite his years of expertise, there was always something about Emily Harper that baffled him. The first time he met her, she was a 25-year-old woman who had been shuffled from one specialist to another with no definitive diagnosis. She had a myriad of symptoms: severe migraines, fainting spells, tremors, and a general feeling of being unwell that no test could explain. There was no clear pattern, no obvious cause, and yet, Emily's condition persisted. Dr. Holmes had seen hundreds of patients with various conditions, but none of them had the same level of mystery as Emily. Her eyes, though dull from years of unexplained suffering, always seemed to harbor a deep sadness. There was a heaviness to her that he couldn't ignore. And so, despite his best efforts to give her a diagnosis and the best treatment available, Dr. Holmes found himself both emotionally and professionally invested in her case. It wasn't just her condition. It was her story, her quiet plea for help that no one seemed able to understand. There was an emotional weight to her symptoms that science couldn't explain. Years passed, and Emily's symptoms showed no signs of improvement. In fact, they worsened. Her tremors became more violent, and the migraines more excruciating. She lost weight rapidly, her once bright eyes now clouded with pain. She began to withdraw, canceling appointments, avoiding contact, and retreating into a world that only seemed to get smaller and more suffocating. Dr. Holmes became increasingly frustrated, unable to find a solution to the riddle that was Emily Harper. Her medical chart grew thicker, filled with inconclusive results from tests, scans, and treatments. Each time he saw her, her condition seemed worse, but the answers were still out of reach. One day, as Emily arrived for another routine checkup, she was noticeably thinner and frilier than before. Her face was pale, her hair unkempt. She seemed on the edge of breaking down. Dr. Holmes, who had never been one to show emotion in front of his patients, found himself holding back a wave of sympathy. "Emily," he said softly, as he closed the door to his office, "how are you feeling today?" "I don't know how much longer I can take this," Emily said, her voice cracking with the weight of unspoken grief. She sat down slowly in the chair opposite him, her hands shaking as she clasped them together in her lap. "I don't know what's wrong with me, Dr. Holmes. I just wanted to stop." Dr. Holmes knew there were no easy answers, but he also knew that a patient who had been through as much as Emily deserved more than just a diagnosis. She needed someone to truly listen, to understand the pain behind the physical symptoms. "I'm doing everything I can," Dr. Holmes replied, his voice steady but tinged with concern. "We'll figure this out, I promise." Emily managed a weak smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. Dr. Holmes tried his best to help, but the clock was ticking, and time, as it always does, only made things worse. 10 years went by. Emily's visits became more sporadic. Sometimes, Dr. Holmes would go months without hearing from her, and then she would suddenly appear in his office, thinner than ever, her symptoms worsening. It was during one of these rare appointments that Dr. Holmes noticed something strange, something that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. Emily was sitting across from him, her usual anxious expression replaced by one of quiet fear. "Emily, I need to ask you something," Dr. Holmes said, his tone shifting to something more serious. "Has anyone ever mentioned the possibility that someone might be causing this? That perhaps it's not just a medical condition, but something more intentional?" Emily's eyes widened, her breath quickening. For a moment, Dr. Holmes saw a flicker of something dark and fearful, behind her gaze. "Why do you ask?" Emily whispered, her voice trembling. Dr. Holmes leaned forward, his voice softer. "Sometimes the body reacts to things that aren't physical, emotional, or psychological trauma. It's possible that someone around you might be unintentionally, or perhaps intentionally, making things worse. Have you ever thought about that?" Emily recoiled slightly, her hands shaking even more. She looked down at her lap, and for a long time, there was nothing but silence between them. It was the kind of silence that spoke volumes. "No," she finally said. Her voice so faint Dr. Holmes almost didn't hear it. "I don't think anyone would do that. I don't know. I don't know why I feel like this." Dr. Holmes felt a chill run through him. It wasn't just the physical symptoms. There was something more sinister at play here, and for the first time in years, Dr. Holmes felt the weight of something he couldn't quite define. Another decade passed, and Emily's condition continued to spiral. She was hospitalized again, but this time, Dr. Holmes was determined to finally get to the bottom of what had been plaguing her for so long. Emily was now in her mid-30s, a shadow of the woman she had once been. But this time, something was different. She was more alert, more present. There was a fire in her eyes that hadn't been there before. "Dr. Holmes," Emily said one day during a routine checkup, her voice firm, "I think I finally know what's been happening to me." Dr. Holmes' heart skipped a beat. Was it possible? Had she finally figured it out? "It's Michael," Emily said, her voice barely above a whisper. "My husband. He's been doing this to me. I didn't know at first, but I've figured it out now. He's poisoning me." Dr. Holmes was stunned. Michael Harper, Emily's husband, had always seemed like the perfect husband. He was charming, caring, and had always been by her side. How could he have been the one behind her suffering? Emily's hands shook as she spoke. "He's been manipulating my doctors, getting them to prescribe things that make me worse. He's been slipping things into my food, my drinks. He's been poisoning me slowly, making me sick so that I depend on him more, and I was too blind to see it." Dr. Holmes felt a wave of anger wash over him. How could someone do this to another human being? How had Emily endured this nightmare for so long without anyone noticing? Without wasting a moment, Dr. Holmes took immediate action. He contacted the authorities, ensuring that Emily was placed under protection. They launched an investigation into Michael Harper, and soon, they uncovered the terrifying truth. He had been poisoning Emily for years, using his position as her husband to hide in plain sight. As the investigation unfolded, it became clear that Michael Harper had been systematically manipulating Emily's health to make her more dependent on him. He controlled her medications, convinced her doctors to administer treatments that kept her weak, and even went as far as to threaten any friends or family who grew suspicious. But when the authorities raided their home, they found a hidden stash of prescription drugs, all tied to Emily's mysterious symptoms. Michael had been buying them from shady sources, tailoring them specifically to exacerbate her condition. The arrest was a turning point. Emily was finally free from the man who had tormented her for so long. But it wasn't just freedom from her abusive husband. It was the reclaiming of her life, her strength, and her voice. The justice that had evaded her for so many years had finally come. Months later, Emily stood in Dr. Holmes' office, healthier than he had ever seen her. She had started therapy and rehabilitation, rebuilding her life piece by piece. The damage caused by the poisoning would never fully heal, but Emily had become something she hadn't been in years, whole. "Thank you," Emily said, her eyes teary but filled with gratitude. "I don't think I would have made it through this without your help." Dr. Holmes smiled, though it was bittersweet. "You did it all on your own, Emily. You survived. That's what matters most." In the end, Emily's recovery was not just physical. She had reclaimed control of her life, her voice, and her power. She had found the strength to speak out against the injustice she had suffered for so long. And through that strength, she became her own hero. Her story was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, and the lesson was clear. Sometimes, the greatest mysteries are not those of the body, but of the trust we place in others. And when that trust is betrayed, it is never too late to reclaim our own truth. Justice had been served, but Emily's true victory was in her survival and her ability to rise from the ashes of her past. What's your take on this chilling tale of survival and betrayal? Do you think Emily's strength was what ultimately saved her, or was it her unwavering determination? Let me know in the comments section. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more Cold Case Chronicles.